Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Hey, Jimmy, you're back.
Yep, I'm back. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations. You made it through the primary.
Yeah, we did it.
So. As if you were worried about that.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
But, I think it's a repeat of the last election cycle, right? It was you and Michelle last time around.
Yep.
And so what I want to do today, and just to make the viewers kind of aware, I want to take a more specific strategy approach to some of the topics and issues. So I went back to the public comments. Because you could go to Facebook, we go to St. George word of mouth, and you could write the 200 comments of things where people get fired about. Yeah. And I think there's some value in there. I really do. Yeah. If you just try to put on your armor, your plated armor when you go into the mosh pit, you can. There's some concerns out there that I think people are more willing to say, and then you got to kind of weed through like the hyperbole of it in some ways. And then the pile-on effect. So you kind of have to sift through it with a little bit of filter. But then I went to the actual public comments. And I went back all of the weeks so far this year. And I won't ask you because some of the questions I was like, is this all of the public comments when it's posted on the website? Is that all of them that you guys receive?
The ones that we receive will be posted on there.
If they send it to you directly, do you send that to them?
Not necessarily. So
okay.
Unless it comes into all of the council, and then it'll be on there. If it comes just to me individually, not necessarily will it be on there.
And I saw some from John Willis where he had forwarded it.
Yes.
So for him,
and if he forwards that to everybody, that's going to be on there as well.
That'll be on there. Yeah. So stuff that goes to him.
Yeah.
So there's a public comment link right on the website that people can go and leave public comments. But I was interested because 34 weeks of doing this, only 15 weeks got comments, and 8 of those weeks were only centered around the airport leasing, which I thought was very interesting because I didn't really follow it. And it's such a niche group of people that it impacted. But then the Sun River Hotel, like that was 8 of the weeks were posted just around those 2 topics. So out of 15 weeks, 8 of them were on 2 specific topics. My first question around public comment is, what do you think is missing from the engagement? How do we bring engagement from the city council? Do you think it's a function of the leadership and that, or is it apathy within the community?
It may be some of both, but in reality, sometimes we treat public comment like a formality versus a necessity. Uh-huh. And I think that the public in general has maybe gotten that little bit of a feeling that, hey, this public comment thing or the request, when we do put requests for public comment out there, is really just a formality. No one's really listening. Do I take the time to do that? So I think that there's probably some of that. And then there's some apathy as well, right? Like, hey, things are going fine. What do I care? They're going to do what they're going to do. So I think we can do a better job to make sure that people understand that we really do value public input and that it is not just a formality, but it's something that's necessary for good governance. Mm-hmm. And that comes with just a lot of messaging. I mean, sometimes we go, yeah, but we've tried. So what if we've tried? Let's keep doing that. Let's make every effort to get it out there that, hey, we want to hear what you have to say. And I think some of that's just a general feeling that maybe we put off as we communicate with people. Mm-hmm. I've always tried to make sure people understand I do value their opinion. Not only do I want to hear it, I want to understand it. And how does that apply to what we're trying to do? In fact, when people call me and maybe just complain, I'll always try to stop that with, okay, I hear you. What's your solution? I want to know, do you have a solution? We don't want to just hear complaints. Let's take it one step further and work through the process like we have to do and give me some information. Even if we don't agree, let's work through the process and maybe give some input. So
is there like a strategy, as a mayor, the criteria, like what your role is. There's I think some have described it as a weak mayor, but ideally you're setting the agenda. You can set strategy and goals and a mission, right, moving forward. So is there a policy that you would say needs to be done, or have we tried something that we could try differently now with given technology tools? I got a survey, and it doesn't tell you the organization. It's just like this random Utah survey or organization, and it had me answer a bunch of questions about water. So I'm like, well, clearly this is either a politician or this is actually the Water Conservancy District wanting this. Is there surveys and things like that we can send out?
We should be looking at anything and everything. And as far as if there's a specific policy, I think we've toyed around with some of that. We have the whole public comment thing that we do at the first of every month. I think we need to make sure that people know that's there, and that yes, we do value that. Regardless of what may have happened in the past with some of those things, that's okay. We want you to come in. We want you to share with us. And it can be on any topic that's important to you. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're going to have to deal with, fluff, or we're going to have to deal with people that just want to, prank us or whatever they want to do. Yeah. But that's just part of the job. So I think as far as policy, we just always need to make sure we're approachable. And that maybe starts way before any policy. It's just part of who we have to be as people who serve in the community, as public servants.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, and that was because I was trying to think, okay, what are topics that are important to the community right now? And a lot of the comments come out of development. A lot of comments recently have been around Zone 6 and environmental, parks and recreation, which I think some of those comments are really good. Yep. And then traffic always ends up becoming one of those as well. And so my first question is around you're going to continue, especially over the next 4 years. I think there's going to be added political pressure around the Northern Corridor and Zone 6.
Yes.
And also the Western Corridor, which is further down the road, but I know there's going to be there's movement afoot in that, right? Sure. With our congressional delegation trying to get land to purchase land for a lot of this infrastructure stuff in the future. So what's your viewpoint on the Northern Corridor? Do you believe that we should move that forward?
Absolutely, and should have been already in the process.
Okay.
That's a very frustrating thing. I've been around long enough to remember the congressional hearings. They all came down to the Dixie Center. That has been fully approved by Congress. It's something we need for our, it's our responsibility as public servants to alleviate and plan for traffic. That's been in the works even before the reserve. I mean, there was always that, hey, that's going to be there. We need to make sure it's there. I've been around long enough to have seen that, known that. Everybody knew it. That the mistake was those that were in charge at the time probably didn't get that solidified in writing enough. That has to go in. We can do both. We can have the reserve. We can, protect the tortoise. Got to quit calling them turtles.
No, it's a turtle. I found out the other day. This is all those people that were giving me crap about it. Every tortoise is a turtle. Not every turtle is a tortoise. Hey, and so when you call it a turtle, you're right. Yeah, all those other guys out there, I learned that the other day. I was like, wait a minute.
Been corrected so many times. It's like, okay, whatever you want, tomato. Yeah, we know what it is. We know it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So I've been waiting to tell all you people that were giving me crap about it. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We're on the same page there. But yeah, we're smart enough to be able to do both, right?
Yeah,
we are smart enough, and I firmly believe, just based on what we see up there, with what has really affected the tortoise or the turtle, is wildfire is the biggest thing that will wipe them out. Mm-hmm. That road will be a natural fire break. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just a simple-minded rancher, right?
Yeah.
The road will be a natural fire break if we do have those fires. It'll help protect the tortoise. In fact, one of the biggest mortality occurrences in that reserve has been a fire in the past 15 years. Killed up to 50% of them, if I remember correctly. So we can do both. We can alleviate the traffic. I'm actually a little bit perturbed that because we've tried to work with the reserve and tried to make it to appease some of those people that are complaining, we've moved that road so far south. I'm afraid we're going to keep moving it so far south that it's not going to be as effective as it could be. Mm-hmm. And now really they've tried to move it to where it's on, it's just going to be part of the existing Red Hills Parkway, which is just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer it needs to happen. I understand the value of the reserve, that people love that. We can do both. We've got to move traffic.
What do you say about this like endless creep though? I think another part, when I interviewed, and if you're listening to the podcast, go back and listen to, we did a bunch of episodes on the Northern Corridor. We covered this from the perspective of the county, the perspective of Conserve Southwest Utah. I talked to Sitla because Sitla is the elephant in the room with this whole thing, is the biggest argument for this Northern Corridor is the value of Exit 13 and being able to connect the west side of the city to the east side of the city. And so it's all of these things. It makes the value of the Sitla land on Exit 13 more valuable in the development. And so how do you relieve the feeling from the residents that are like, okay, it's about the turtle, about the tortoise, but it's also about this feeling of endless creep. And so, maybe you can respond in some version of how do we draw these boundaries, and how do we give confidence to the community that this isn't just going to cause more development using more resources?
Sure. And so we all want and look for those win-win situations, right? We want everybody to come away with something they can feel good about. And that's really what I thought happened here with Sitla, is that yes, their property at Exit 13 is going to be more valuable. When do they ever give up rights on other properties? So, for example, Zone 6, the fact that we were able to strike a deal which said, hey, we're going to give that up, and really they could probably see the value of the Exit 13 property, then they win. We all win, and including those that enjoy the Zone 6 and want to protect that, which I think we're kind of all in that boat. We want to see some open spaces protected. There's some pretty valuable things there that we all like, and even if we don't, we understand that other people are very invested in that, like those bike trails and different things that people love. So I mean, there's got to be an effort to win on all those areas, but the endless creep thing, as we talk about that, we do have some pretty as far as St. George is concerned, we do have some pretty natural boundaries. We know where those are. Either other cities, and again, we talk about other cities, they could have creep. You think about Hurricane, there's so much land mass there that they could grow quite a bit. But as far as St. George is concerned, we know what our boundaries are. I don't know that we have a lot of endless creep. We know where those boundaries are. We have the reserve there. I don't think we're ever going to, that's what we put into place. No development. The road's going to be there. That's it. Mm-hmm. And then we have our border with the state of Arizona going that way. And we got our other cities on our other sides. We know what our boundary is. The endless creep's going to come if we just continually change our density is where our real challenge is. So I don't think we have an endless creep problem in St. George City per se. Now you may argue that for other cities, but I just don't think we have that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a fair analysis. So in your perspective in protecting Zone 6, do you feel like these are separate issues? Because I think at least from when I talked to Conserve Southwest Utah, their perspective is these are two separate battles. Right. And I think from the municipal side, the county side, the Sitla side, they are connecting these. Even the federal government side, they are all these are two connected pieces.
Absolutely. And I think from maybe an environmental side, they want it to be separate issues because they want to win all of it. They want to take all the marbles, right? They want to take everything. And I get that. Hey, we all want to win, right? But they are all connected, and that was the beauty of the agreement, is that we can all have something that we get out of it. And by separating those, we want that to be separate, so we have to protect that. Yet we want the Northern Corridor to go away. No, these are all connected. That's why Zone 6 got the protection, is because it wasn't necessary in the beginning of that agreement, but to appease and to work with everybody. And really, I don't think there's anybody at the city that doesn't want to protect the Zone 6. So there's some value in that.
That kind of leads me to this next. It's putting you a little bit on the spot, but would you, assuming that the Northern Corridor doesn't move forward and Sitla decides that they're going to move forward with developing Zone 6, would you actively oppose any development that they do? Would you stand up and say, hey, I'm going to make this difficult, or I'm going to make my voice heard to Sitla and the state, and maybe get rowdy, as much as you can as the mayor? Obviously, you're not going to have necessarily a mechanism all that much to slow the development or change what they do, but are you going to stand up against that unlike, and I agree with you on the Northern Corridor that they're two totally separate, different things. But it seems like you're in favor of the Northern Corridor. Are you, if they decide to move forward with the development of Zone 6, are you going to stand up in opposing that in any capacity that you can?
The better answer to that, and really it's strategic as well, is if we say that right now, we're waving a white flag.
Okay.
So we're waving a white flag. I still firmly
help me understand that a little bit.
So it's strategy, right? If we just say, yeah, we're going to protect that, and I think this is what the county and the federal government are doing. Let's just be honest. If we give up now and say, yeah, we're going to fight that, and we know, because we don't know what Sitla will do. Their mission is to develop at the highest and best use, right? Get the most money they can for
the properties that are the most developable. And Kyle Paisley sat here and he told me, he said, that is number one on all of the properties that we have across the entire state. That's number one.
Yeah.
And so he's, in my mind, he's telling me that we're going to do that if Northern Corridor continues to be delayed and they can't develop 13. That's number two.
Right. So they're using that as a bargaining chip. Let's face it. That's what they're doing. I don't think you're going to find anybody that's going to wave the white flag on that and say, regardless of what happens, we're going to protect Zone 6. I can't promise that because I'm not Sitla. I cannot promise that. And so to say that right now would be really premature. And I'm still one that's still in the fight. I'm saying we've got to make this happen. Let's get the Northern Corridor done. It's so frustrating to me that we have not just done that already. And then we wouldn't be having this discussion. We already had the agreement down there. We would be in such a better place. I think this is an example where maybe Conserve Southwest has shot themselves in the foot, so to speak. It's really put us at odds. It makes someone like me very leery of trying to make agreements with those groups and trying to work together, because this has been an ongoing struggle of, okay, we're all giving a little bit, right? We're trying to make sure this works and it's going to benefit everybody. I look at it from that perspective. Is this going to benefit the whole? Well, what's going to benefit the whole the most? And I think we had struck that deal. And now we're back to square one where, we're getting put in a position of we're going to wave the white flag and say, oh, whatever happens, we're just going to fight for it. I don't think that's the right position to take right now. That Zone 6 is in danger of being developed. That's the message that needs to be out there. It's in danger of being developed. There's only Sitla can make that decision. Let's go back and do what's right. Get back to the original agreement, the agreement that says we're protecting Zone 6 in exchange to get the Northern Corridor. Let's get the equipment up there. Let's get the road put in. It's going to be a win-win-win across the board. At the end of the day, yes, I want to see that protected. I want to see those areas so people can recreate. That's a big thing here. Yes, I want that to be.
It's an incredible piece of property.
It's just phenomenal, and we don't want to lose all that. It's just like everything else that happens with growth. We don't want to give everything up. We don't want to give our sense of community, all those things. Same with that. We don't want to give up what gives us the character here, and those are a couple of unique areas like that we have to fight for. And yes, I will fight for those. But right now, the focus is on the battle, which is, hey, we had a good agreement. It was a win-win across the board. Let's get back to that. And that's my firm belief.
So maybe sticking with a little bit of traffic, because I know Sun River has a really strong opinion about this, and they're a big voting bloc.
Sure.
So the Western Corridor, they've raised a lot of concerns. That the current plan, I believe, in the Dixie transportation plan is that it connects right into right through the center of Sun River. So, but I also can see the perspective of Santa Clara economically, the Shivowitz and their future plans, Ivans, Black Desert, being able to relieve what is likely going to be heavy traffic on Bluff and up 18. That Western Corridor, what's your perspective on that? Do you see that there is alternatives to the Western Corridor, or is that kind of an inevitable, hey, this is going to be rounding out the general transportation plan with the land that we have? What's your perspective?
The Western Corridor is going to have to go in some form. Now, the actual alignment of that, we can talk about. However, it's always been part of the discussion, and that's the danger with when you have plans that are out 40 and 50 years of making sure people that are moving in understand those plans. It was always meant, you see how that road goes right down to the river, the Sun River Parkway, and it ends right there. It's almost like, hey, we're ready to hook on at any time here. So that's always been a part of the plan. That's the exits there. It's the first exit in Utah. It was meant to be busy. Now, do I understand the concerns of those people in Sun River? Yes. And for the longest time, we've been able to say, hey, you and I aren't going to have to worry about that in our lifetime. However, the growth has been enough that we've had to say, hey, let's move that up on the plan now. Instead of being in the 40 to 50-year plan, it's more in the 25-year plan. And I think that's wise because we can make those plans so we don't have the same. I mean, look how long it's taken on the Northern Corridor. And even then, we're still not there. So yes, the Western Corridor is going to have to come in some form. Is there a way to realign that that's more conducive to community? Possibly. Those will be decisions that eventually UDOT makes with some of our input. Their mission, though, when you talk about different groups and their mission, UDOT's mission is to move traffic. At the end of the day, if we tell them, hey, we don't like this, we'd like to put this behind Sun River, maybe right along the Arizona-Utah border, they may listen to that, or they may just say, hey, this has always been planned, we're going to go in there.
Yeah.
Then it's incumbent upon us to say, okay, how can we still connect the community? Do we need to raise that road and make underpasses? Do we have overpasses so that people can walk back and forth, or more importantly, drive their golf carts back and forth?
Yeah.
And I think that's important discussion to have. If it's going to go in and it's going to go in there, do we really want to bisect that community? I want to make sure they can be connected. The golf course is only on one side, so they need to get back and forth too. So I think we get all that. We need to have that discussion. But the very short answer is the Western Corridor in some form, I believe, needs to go in, or we're going to have a major congestion like on Dixie Drive that's going to be insurmountable. So.
Do you see an opportunity at this stage for public transportation infrastructure being obviously not a cost solution, but a solution nevertheless, that could maybe remove this need for roads and a car-centered community? I know there's a lot of discussion. I know Strong Towns, there's been a group that's formed that's kind of building on this perspective of how do you build a really strong community that's focused on interacting with each other, that's not centered around a car-centered city plan. It's really difficult because we've evolved into a culture, especially in the United States, of being centered around a car. Yeah. Do you see an opportunity to where maybe a public transportation infrastructure at some capacity here, whether we look at like an electric transportation system, or a more robust busing system, or which I'm not in favor of, but has that kind of a discussion ever been talked about at the transportation planning?
Yes, and I've been a longtime member of the Dixie Transportation Executive Committee, the DTEC we call it, or the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. Those ideas have come up quite a bit. We talked about the university actually came up with a pretty good plan through one of their projects and analysis for electric trains, which was really cool on paper. I think you hit the nail on the head. We are a culture, myself included, we just like to get in our car and go where we want to go. And I think unless we force people to where they have to use public transportation, which I am not in favor of. I know there are people that would love to see us, just say, hey, sorry, we're narrowing the roads down to where you can't really drive on them much. So now if you want to get somewhere, you've got to get on the bus. I'm not in favor of that. I don't think that's the answer. It's contradictive to freedom, which I think that's what the automobile has done for us in America, is it's kind of added to that. We are free people. We can go and do what we want to do. So I don't know that's the answer. Now, do we need to provide public transportation that knows that for those that need it? Can it alleviate some traffic? Absolutely. I believe that. Is it going to be used? I mean, you go to any big city, it gets used quite a bit. There's still tons of traffic. I don't think that's going to be the answer. And so, I'm not one that's going to say we're going to go in and build this robust public transportation system, which nowhere is it cost effective. It's always going to cost more than you can ever recover. Right. Even in the big cities.
It would have to be viewed on as a social utility.
Sure.
looking at it from a perspective of like, this is a utility that's going to improve and outweigh like the social cost of it, or the social benefit of it outweighs the financial cost of it. And are we willing to, you know, put that to the test?
Yeah.
It's almost like, in my mind, it's really analogous to parks and trails, because like when you look at it on a piece of paper, what's the financial value?
I see what you're saying.
$0.
Yeah.
But the community value
Right.
of it completely outweighs that, right? And so, and then is there, I mean, I just can't help but think, you know, through automated driving and self-driving capabilities, and 10 years from now and the generations coming up, you know, is there, and I also think of the senior community where there's a lot of them that they cannot drive.
Yeah.
They just can't drive, right? I just sold a home in Sun River, and the lady's blind, and
Right.
she wants to move to a 55 plus community. And so Sun River and the new grocery store is right there, is perfect for her. She can walk to the store now, right?
Sure.
Where that wasn't even, there was nowhere in town that you could actually do that, right? And
So I think a couple of things come into play here. I think we have to have some public transportation capabilities, but I think you hit it on the head when you said, what is our mode of transportation going to be like in the future? There's several different things that are changing that may change our total mode of transportation and may cure some of that. So we don't know that. The last part of that is, I think we've tried to do this at St. George, build communities that require less of that travel. Like right now, I can't remember where you live for sure, but
I'm out in Ivans.
Yeah. So how far do you have to go to find a grocery store or a gas station?
Yeah. I gotta go ways.
So do we try to have, and this is something we've been talking about for 10 years plus at St. George City. Do we have more neighborhood commercial, which, you know, people in residential areas get a little nervous about commercial in their area, but do we have neighborhood commercial, which says, okay, I've got a place where I can get all my essential services in my neighborhood or close to my neighborhood. So for example, myself, I have to contribute to all the traffic on River Road to get up to a grocery store from where I live in Little Valley. So if I have a grocery store closer, which there's a Lynn's planned there on Brigham Road, and then maybe another grocery store coming on 3000, not to be determined, I will not have to go up River Road if those things go in.
Right.
That'll alleviate traffic concerns.
Yep.
It'll alleviate a lot of transportation. So I think there's a multifaceted approach that we can do that we've been working on at St. George City that we need to focus on even more to help with that transportation issue. Yes, we're going to have some public transportation. I just don't think it's like it's to the point of what you're alluding to of at this point at least, to say, hey, we need a more robust system that prioritizes public transportation over the ability to get in my car and get where I need to be. I think our focus as elected officials needs to be make sure we can move traffic and get it to where it needs to be.
To kind of point out, I appreciate you went that route, because that was in my mind. I'm like, that's been part of the problem, is that the suburban sprawl and the inability for commercial to develop in certain areas. And the incentive for developers to say, if this project is so difficult, I'm just going to go build houses. You know, that's what they'll do, right? They don't want to just sit on a piece of property and be like, well, hopefully one day I'll have a city council or a community that's okay with commercial. They'll just go build more houses, and then the traffic problem keeps, having an issue. And you can plan all day long with transportation, but if 50 acres of farmland turns into just homes and not a single, service, then River Road's going to get hammered.
Yes.
And we're in that growing pain period, right? And so how do we help, adjust some of that issue by bringing in commercial?
100%. I love what's happening on the corner of 3000 and 2450. Luckily, we have a big enough piece of property there, the old Cox Farm.
I know my concern was like, man, it's a lot going right there. So are we just maybe pulling traffic from over here and putting it over here? It's just what I had in my mind. I was like, that's a lot of stuff going on right there.
But we got, I think it's 20 acres of commercial on the corner.
This is Paseo. Is that how
No, it's corner of 2450. You're thinking further north. 2450 south. And 3000 George Washington Academy.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Right across the street,
that
corner is already commercial. We've already zoned that commercial, and then you have the community feathering out from there. Like you have a little higher density residential around the commercial, appropriately done, and then it goes into bigger lots as you go out. So what goes in there is going to be crucial to that neighborhood commercial and how that development works. That'll be if that develops into the right commercial, that'll be where I go from my home, which is just up 2450, and will alleviate me going up 3,000 even to where the closest grocery store would be Lynn's or Harmon's clear up on 700 South. So that's I love what's happening there. Again, we're lucky enough to have a developer with a big enough piece of property that can make all that plan happen, and I'm glad to see that. And we've tried to make room for that by having our master plan with some commercial in it in different neighborhoods like that. Again, we always have a lot of pushback from neighbors about commercial, a gas station or a grocery store, but that's a big key to keeping our traffic, in control.
Yeah. So okay, I'm gonna transition a little bit to you brought up a little bit about the affordable housing. Considering you were talking about that endless creep and the zoning, situation that you have, there's a big there's a chasm between we have this 20-year plan and then you stick to the plan. If you don't change the 20-year plan and you just don't do a bunch of rezone, that the developers will endlessly come and say, hey, I want to rezone this to this because I have this idea, right?
Sure.
So we stick to that. And also in that 20-year period, a lot of things can change. And so what I kind of noticed from the previous 20-year plan is as you got closer to the end of that 20 years, there was way more changes in the 20-year plan than there was in the first, 5 to 10 years of the plan. And so when thinking about this, is there kind of a set, as a mayor, you can set an agenda, set ordinance changes, set for, plans to really hammer down in the next 4 years? Do you have kind of a strategy, kind of a mission in mind to say, hey, here are some things that I would put on the agenda for the city council to vote on that can steer the community in this particular direction? Do you have, some of those things that you're like, hey, this is something that I think is important and I'm going to put it on the agenda and offer it up for a vote and see what happens, right? Because you don't get to decide on it, but you can at least say, hey, this is where I think we should go.
You do, as the mayor, get to decide what to put on the agenda. And a lot of times those things are not discussed because they don't get put on an agenda. And then a developer will come forth with a project that's, oh, wait, we should have been talking about this, 5 years ago as a council, but we've kind of buried our head in the sand because it hasn't been on the agenda. The nice thing about putting something on the agenda is that it brings it out into the light. It causes council members, which I am one now, to stop and go, oh, wait a second. Have I thought about this? Do I have a plan? So as far as specific plans, I think we just need to make sure that you're exactly right. When we talk about that master plan, we do have to have some flexibility, but I think if we don't have that solid master plan in the back of our mind and we don't have a really good reason to change it, I think that leads to making spur of the moment decisions, which then are going to affect us for generations to come. So I think the biggest policy is,
and it also feels like to the community, sorry to interrupt, but
that's right.
It feels to the community that they're giving in to pressures from the man, right? The developer,
100%.
The California big business developer, right? That is really what it crops up into the community is feeling like.
So we should be putting that to a test when we go to change that master plan. Is not that we can absolutely 0% change it, but that why are we changing that and what is it doing to the long-term plan, and make sure we're having that discussion. So as far as policies are concerned, it needs to be a little bit easier for council people to be able to come forward and say, hey, can we talk about this? Put it on the agenda. Whether I like that or not, I think that the biggest policy is if the council wants to talk about it or it needs to be talked about, whether I like that or not, it's got to go on the agenda. And I don't think that always happens. I think a lot of times, we, as humans, we have a tendency to maximize whatever power we do have. And so, sometimes at the office of the mayor, you don't have a lot of flexibility or a lot of options to flex your muscle, I guess to say. So that control of the agenda can become a little bit dominant. I think we need to be okay. Hey, council member, you have something you need to be on the agenda. If it's not just frivolous, I think it needs to go on the agenda.
What's something that you feel like should be on the agenda that hasn't been talked about?
I don't think it's necessarily just things that are on the agenda. It's making sure we have all the information sometimes of those things that are on the agenda. Sometimes what we get is presented a glossy package of here's what it is. So we need to have both sides of an issue coming forth on an agenda. So kind of like maybe before we were talking about, being a little bit of the devil's advocate. It's okay to actually seek out and bring someone in that has an opposing view. When we place things on the ballot, when you have citizen amendments or whatever on the ballots,
referendums,
yeah. Sorry, I couldn't find the word there, but there always is an opposing view. We welcome that, we encourage that. I think that's something that we don't get a lot of at City Council. And there's things that we may go through a whole meeting and maybe even make a decision, and then say, wait a second, I didn't know this, or why didn't we have someone there presenting this? Again, this is about openness and transparency. That's the biggest thing that I would want to do more of, so that we can have opposing views and make the better decision based on all that information. Even if we don't agree with it, you've got to understand what that opposing view is. So that's from everything from infrastructure to water. I mean, there's a lot of those things where we don't sit on those some of those boards, like the water board per se. Do we have all the right information? And so I'm not saying we haven't always had all the right information, or there's not access to it. It just needs to be readily available to those people that are making the decision, and have enough time beforehand to where we can properly analyze it.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to you a little bit about. I got fired up this morning when I was talking about the moderate income housing plan, right? And so the state has issued a mandate for cities to come up with plans on taking care of affordable housing.
Right.
And then as I reviewed that plan, they're citing statistics in this plan from the city. They're citing statistics from Zillow, which when you look at the statistics from Zillow and you find out how do they gather their information, it's an estimated data based off of an algorithm, because they don't actually use real data. They just say, hey, based off of the information we have, this is our projected. So like in this really important plan, in my opinion, the city is using data that's not even a full story, right? And so when we think of like these particular things that get approached, why do you think that happens? Do you think that falls apart a little bit at the city manager level, or is it maybe a lack of leadership from the mayor or the city council to say, hey, we demand good information? Where do you think that's fallen short?
Well, it should all start at the top, right? That the mayor sets the agenda. To me, that's where I lay the blame. You are absolutely correct when we talk about that. We have to have the right data when we're talking about these issues, and sometimes human nature is if I'm advocating for something, I'm going to put the best story forward, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I get that, but we've got to move away from that. I'll just touch on a really quick subject that's a touchy subject right now, 700 East and the project there with the narrowing the road and putting in the we're going to call it a multi-use trail now, a multi-use path, because it's not a bike trail, because the question was asked, what's the data on how many of those students are riding bikes? How many bikes are going to be on there? What is the data? I don't know that. Nobody knows that. Nobody has that information. So it's not a bike trail now. It's a multi-use trail. And in my opinion, you can tell I voted no on this. It's going to be beautiful. I mean, you got the palm trees right there and all that, but we've narrowed the road, lost parking for a bike trail that I believe the data would show very little use. Very little use.
It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg though, right? So it's like, well, are they using it? Are they not using it because it's not really safe?
Build it and they will come. Okay.
Because I use that road quite a bit. I drive, past it, through it, probably 4 or 5 times a day, depending on, where I'm headed. And I do see a lot of students walking to and from the residential properties that are all over there. Obviously having a car, plus, being able to park it, plus being able to go to school and all those things.
So again, where's the data? How many people live on campus? How many people drive to campus and they're not going to have a bike? We need proper ways for them to walk. And we were working to try to make it easier to cross the road. That was something that needed to happen. But did it require, we have a pretty wide sidewalk there already at Dixie State. And I don't want to focus too much on that one because it is something that I disagree with the majority of the council.
I caught your Dixie State. I caught the Dixie State thing.
Did I say that?
You did. You did.
It probably will be something that, and that's not necessarily on purpose. It's just never
habitual.
It's never going to go away.
It's never going to go away.
Utah Tech. Those are the kind of things where why weren't we just, that decision wasn't based on how many people are going to use that.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, My money is on the fact that it will never be a fully used path. Build it and they will come. I understand that. I just don't think that's the nature of Utah Tech. Is that, yes, we do have a lot more campus housing there. But I think it's more convenient for those kids to walk. Those students to just walk. They're not riding a bike. Now they may jump on a scooter and use that once in a while. I just don't think the cost, the benefit is good enough
seems
to
like a
justify
test.
the cost.
To me, it seems like a test. Like, hey, is this something that if there's adoption that we could see more walkability in the downtown and more of a downtown? Because I think of big cities. I think of big cities with colleges in the center, and sure. I went to a college that was a commuter college, right? It was sure. Most of the people were commuting and they were driving. And so, but I visited a lot of campuses where everybody just walks around the town. There's the town and the college, sure. and everybody is walking. And sure. is that a function of just that community is different, or do we just not have really the infrastructure to kind of facilitate that?
Sure.
I don't know. But you got to have the data.
Yeah. Again. Okay, so where has it worked? Where has it not worked? And what are the numbers?
Did you install a little trail cam like they got everywhere else on that thing?
That was kind of my question: is, hey, did we count? Do we know? No.
Or could you now? And then you could see?
And we could, and we're already down that road, but there's all kinds of other ramifications there that I believe. Are we really clear on what that cost the city?
I don't know. How much did it?
Yeah,
do you know?
It was supposed to be $500. I don't know that that's what it is right now. It might be closer to $900. Where else could we have used that $900 that maybe was more necessary? I've talked to our people over in the development over by DeVario and in that area, in the Gap Canyon area. That Gap Canyon Drive, they want that road done because traffic is becoming unbearable in the Sunbrook community. Mm-hmm. And the development agreement only requires the developer to put in a certain amount of that road at a time as they develop. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe as a city, we could have went and put in our portion of it, which is just the center portion. So there is at least, 2 lanes of traffic. But where do we find the money? Mm-hmm. Well, I know where we could have found
900 of it.
Yeah, 900,000, $500,000, whatever the number is.
Yeah,
where we could have. So it's just, again, that's the information that I think we could do a better job. Now, are we doing better than when I started on the council? 100%. I think that our staff has taken the message from the council members that we need more information, and they've done a phenomenal job of moving that forward as far as getting us better and more information. Mm-hmm. I want to create an atmosphere where that's just standard practice, where it's just known. Hey, if you got information, get it in here. Let's get it out to the council.
Real data. Real data.
Yeah.
Let's get real data. And if we don't have the real data, we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
We're not going to make a decision based off not enough information, and especially nowadays.
Yeah, and we even want comments from the neighbors that maybe don't know the data, but they know the real life experience that says, hey, when I get up in the morning and try to go somewhere, this is what's happening.
Yeah,
we need to have that information.
Yeah. Going back to financial responsibility, because I think that was a good transition on. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on zero-based budgeting? Do you think, is there something as part of the agenda that you could set to kind of codify a specific process in managing the budget? Do you think that needs to change? Do you find that because I believe that there is a growing group of skeptics that don't trust that money's being allocated accurately. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of transparency and a budget process that is very clear and reset on an annual basis, not a copy paste kind of a system where it's like, well, this is the way we've done it. Do you think there's
zero? You're zero.
Yeah. What is your perspective on zero-based budgeting? And is that something or something similar to that part of what you would do as setting the agenda and pushing that forward?
We've made a lot of strides, and I think you talk to any council member over the last several years of making the budget process more transparent and more in line with council priorities first. And then how does the budget fit into that? Mm-hmm. So now instead of starting out like with our last year's budget saying, here is all the things that, that we need, we're saying, okay, what's the council's priorities? That's our first budget meeting. What are our priorities? No talk about money. Then the talk is about priorities. And then we can go back now and say, okay, now the council's priorities as a department head, develop your budget and show us how that fits into the council priorities. So now instead of just saying, here's all the things I need, you have to come into the next council meeting or the next budget meeting, which we make these, full day meetings, and show us how your budget fits into the council priorities, and why do you need those things? Of course, there's always that kind of set figure when you talk about zero-based, that set figure of staffing, and that we can kind of always know. Here's the biggest key is by state law, we're required to balance. We have no ability other than to balance the budget. So we have to have a balanced budget. There's no deficit spending. If it doesn't balance, we have to just cut something. But it starts, and I think it's a much better position. I think you would talk to every council member, they would say, we're in such a better position. And this was basically kind of a product of the whole property tax increase debacle. I'll call it a debacle.
It was a debacle.
Yeah, that we started developing that more of. We realized there was a little bit of a disconnect about, yes, the council wanted to fund public safety as priority number one. How they did it is where the disconnect was. Oh, well, if we need to fund it, we just need to raise property taxes, and that was where the breakdown occurred. So. I think if people were to go back and watch that whole process now, away from all the emotion, it was kind of fascinating that all of a sudden we were able to balance the budget and prioritize that funding for the police department, fully fund it without a property tax increase. And it was just a matter of a couple of really moving pieces around. That's where maybe the zero-based budget would have come in very handy, because we could have started from zero and funded it, and everything would have made sense at that point. It would have made total sense. Instead, we kind of went in reverse and started saying, okay, we've got all this, we've got this, what are we short? And when it came down to it, we were only short like $150,000. It was a maintenance shed at the Dixie Red Hills golf course that we just delayed. And we balanced our budget that first year of the Safe St. George plan, fully funded our first year of that Safe St. George plan. Yeah. And people forget.
Is that set into like, hey, this is the process, or is this just something is there a specific, ordinance or legislative directive that this is the way that St. George does it? Or could, if we got 3 new council members, could that change and then that not be the process?
It could change. That's the direction that we've given as a current council to the our assistant city manager and our budget director, Robert Myers, this is the way we want to go. And in credit to him, he could see the disconnect and say, there's something quite not right here. There's not clicking. We're still at butting heads that come to budget meeting. And so he brought in some experts on this subject that he had, met in Texas at his previous job. And it really, I can't remember the guy's name, but anyways, he brought it home that priorities of the council is first, budget is second. Yeah. And to give credit, I think we got to give credit to Robert and some of the other staff that said, hey, we see what the issue is here. How do we get it, the council, to the right place? I think that's another key, is that we need to make sure we're hiring the best of the best. And that's where, when we get a little heat for when we talk about our budget and our pay scale for our employees, there's a fine line between getting people that are going to do the job at the very highest ability, which will eventually, in the long run, save you money, versus the least expensive employee or the one that'll come to work for you at the least amount. So there's a whole lot of things we could talk about on the budgeting, but I think that's my general philosophy is priorities first, budget second, and I think that gets us to a better space where, instead of just saying, hey, we need more money, and then we need to raise taxes, that's one thing on the campaign I've tried to make clear is our first priority needs to be, smarter budgeting versus just always asking for more and more and more.
Yeah. I think last string of questioning is on affordable housing. And I know that you've served on the Switch Point, dealing with the homeless community. I don't know, you're on the board of directors there at Switch Point. Yep. So one of the things that I've seen, and this is directly I've watched you do, is we've had plans and development plans that were put into the city, and I'll use the development that's there on 300 West and St. George Boulevard, a big building. The original plan, you had voted against it over, I think it was like 6 or 10 feet. It was higher than you felt like was something that we should have in the downtown. Sure. Has your opinion kind of shifted on what the city council should control as far as, how things should look and how big they should be? Because in my mind, I'm like 6 feet. Okay, what's really the difference from the ground level to that 6 feet? And we're going to delay some of this development. When you're looking at these two things, you're dealing with the homeless and the most affected, and then you're looking at an opportunity right there in St. George Boulevard to say, hey, we can get affordable housing for a renter base, right?
Sure.
A specific subset of the community. And then there's a delay in that because of some of the decisions we make on how do we allow that to move forward.
Sure.
How do you balance out those two? And are you having a shifting opinion on that, or what's your plan if you're the mayor and setting those agenda? Do you think we should continue to get the government out of the way and say, hey, we can't, we're not helping, we're maybe hurting?
Sure.
What's your thought on that?
Good question, but I think you have to realize that what came of those discussions, and we didn't probably have a good enough plan, a master plan set in place for downtown and some of the other areas. What came of those conversations is how can we do that? Because the concern was, do we want to create this cave-like effect on the boulevard or in any part of our community in reality? What's come of those discussions is a better plan on how to say, if we are going to go extra height, we've come up with the setbacks where you can go up a couple of stories, then you set back. And what does that do? It focuses on one of our other priorities, which has been, what do we enjoy around St. George? It's the views, right? It's the Red Hill, it's the Black Hill, whatever it is. So we've created what we've called view corridors, and that was part of the downtown plan. So is my opinion shifting on that? Yes and no. It's shifting because we're coming up with a better way to do that. If you look at what we've just recently approved with the Whitworth Group's hotel, there's a lot more. It's going a lot higher than what we've done traditionally in the past. We've kind of done, not so much done away with the height restrictions, as we've said, height's not as important as how that height looks, how that height affects the priorities that the council has, which should be the priorities of the community, right? How do we create a community or a downtown that doesn't feel like, I talk about Phoenix a lot because I've been to downtown Phoenix, and it's almost like there's, in some of those areas, there's just big, tall buildings and it's just kind of blah. It doesn't feel like you want to be there. You're in a hallway almost, like with these straight up buildings. The first thing you want to do is get out of there, right? Instead of wanting to spending some time in downtown. So that's what we've tried to create. I think those discussions and even those no votes have led us to that point. So as far as housing affordability and how that goes, I know there's a lot of talk that the higher we go, the more affordable it becomes. I don't think that's always the case in St. George. Case in point, if you look at what we're doing up on Tech Ridge and some of that, we've gone some extra height there. Those are not necessarily going to be affordable. Let's just be honest. They're not necessarily going to be affordable. So I think it goes both ways. We can't just say this is the answer to everything. Everything has to be higher. And I think my pushback on that height stuff has created a better plan. And again, that's where I think we need to bring in all the information. And am I willing to look at things that are higher now than I was before? Absolutely. Remembering that information was coming to me from community members. This is what it's going to do. Or these areas I've been to, we don't want to be that. And so we listen to that and try to get the best information we can.
Yeah.
So yes and no on that evolving question. I think it's been more of a function of we've done a better job of modifying the master plan so that we can have a good product that maybe goes a little higher.
So in your perspective, then what does impact affordability? Like when I look at Tech Ridge and they just approved, about 200 apartment living. It's an apartment community up there where people are going to be able to have jobs, because the future of that is going to be, probably 80% commercial. Out of all the buildings that are up there, they're going to be job type places. They're not going to be a ton of residential up there. And so, this is the early plan of housing a certain percentage of the people that will actually end up working there.
Sure.
And it alleviates, the traffic going up and down off the hill. So, when you look at that, that specific unit, they might not be affordable to live in, but for the ones that will live in there, they're going to have jobs that are going to be higher paying than most of the community. Sure. So there's a little bit of trade-off, but it also relieves, when they're renting there instead of renting somewhere else, it opens up the opportunity for others to rent there, right? So what does impact affordability?
And that's the real key. A lot of it, two things: desirability. I mean, that's our downside here. Everybody wants to be here. It's going to be hard for us ever to fulfill the next part of that equation, which is supply and demand. Obviously, the demand is so high that, that's affecting the affordability. And as long as people desire to be here, I don't know that we'll ever be able to build enough to solve that. Now, that plays into the thing that I worry the most about, which is we get so far down this road on affordability that we don't think about the future. Does everybody really want to live in maybe what's going on at Tech Ridge, a high-rise apartment? My answer to that, I think the answer is no, not everybody. Is there a place for it? Do we want to have some of that? Absolutely. But it feels like the trend has always been more, taller, higher. Everything now needs to be higher density, everything. That's what the next generation wants. The data does not prove that to be true. I think the next generation, a lot of them, once they do grow up, they get married and they want to have a couple of children, they still have the American dream. Maybe it's downsized a little bit, but they still want to own a home. They still want to have a little bit of a yard. They still want to have their own four walls. And so let's not create everything based on today's scenario, which is we need just a bunch of apartments. Yeah. So I don't want to discount the fact that we can have some impact on that as the government and as some of our regulation. I'm not discounting that. But I think we can't listen to that loud scream from developers all the time that everything we do is just cause prices to go through the roof. I think if you really take a step back and look at St. George, that housing affordability problem is a lot about desirability, the want to be here, and the supply and demand. Now, right now, it seems like we're getting a pretty good supply now, and developers have been really good at looking at what do people want and trying to develop that.
Yeah, I think they're ahead of the curve a little bit on that. I think they're better at reading the market than really legislation and zoning approvals and things can really keep up with, right? Yeah. If you look at, especially if you look at the data, going back to the data over the last 3 years, the average new construction home is under 500,000. Right, the average new construction home, and it feels like we're just building a bunch of McMansions, which we're building a lot of that. But the vast majority of what we are building are townhomes, and whether you like that or not, but it really is. We're getting one of the two. We're getting townhomes and apartments, or we're getting McMansions. Right, those are so we're missing a little bit of that middle housing, and
that's where our master plan comes back.
That's where the master plan comes back in. That's where zoning does come back in, and it's not necessarily this infinite everything higher density, but how do we get redevelopment and things like that? Sure. And I think if we're pragmatic about it, so then on the flip side, we look at about 30%. It's probably 25% of the community has less than 50%. Area median income. And so the ability for them to afford, when we're talking about 25% of the community, and majority of this are senior citizens and single moms with kids. Yep. If you really get into the data, like that's who it is, senior citizens that they can earn more money, and single moms with kids. So from the government side, do you think that there is a role? How do we serve that portion of the community? Knowing the work you've done with SwitchPoint,
great question.
Is there something that we should be putting into law, or is that government overreach and we're like, hey, somebody else got to fix it?
Great question. That out? Just before I came here, I left my St. George Housing Authority board meeting. So we do have a St. George Housing Authority here in St. George. They have the Dixie Sun Manor, which is right down the road here, which is a senior housing project, which uses the housing vouchers. The housing voucher program, I think...
Section 8?
Section 8. Section 8 housing vouchers, I think is a great program because it takes into consideration people have to be on that list for a reason, takes into consideration what that work they are doing, how much money they are making, and then gives a percentage to help pay for rent.
Yeah, subsidy.
Yeah. So we just opened our waiting list that has been, it's been 6 years since we had our waiting list open. People camped out for 36 hours. We had over 250 applications within the first couple of hours, people waiting in line for 36 hours to be on that list. And to be honest, to get through that list that we just, probably have 1,000 applicants on there by the time we're done. It's still open. You can still apply. That's going to take at least 6 years to get all those people on a voucher. First, you got to sift through the ones that qualify and the ones that don't. I think there's more we could do in that area. And that's just simply a program where, and I think it's a lot like the SwitchPoint model where, there's some accountability. You have to show that you can be on the program. You have to show that you have employment or you're seeking employment. And then we're going to fill the gap. versus just saying, here's a handout. It's like, hey, how can we help you fill the gap? And there's some great room for that to be improved. We're working on that at the St. George Housing Authority. How can we find more places where we can build a product that's affordable? And then we deal, these are units that have to meet these median income requirements and rent requirements. But what was I looking at? A 2-bedroom unit now, average price is like $1,700 a month. There's a real affordability problem. So can we do more on that area? I think that, to me, that's a better answer than saying we're going to fix it with some government regulation. I don't know that's going to fit. If we opened it up wide and said, hey, build whatever you want, I don't think that housing is going to become more affordable in St. George. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
can it have a small impact? Sure.
And I don't know if it comes down to, lowering the barrier on certain private properties, and also maybe investing in housing is only one function of it. And so what are some other programs? Like I can't help but think, like, are there city programs? We have a really robust recreation system. How does childcare come into effect on that? How are some of these things that, okay, maybe we don't necessarily have to subsidize housing, which can be challenging for qualification and things like that, but how do we maybe focus on other types of relief for senior citizens and for, single parent, because it's not always mothers, but single parent homes with kids? Have we thought about that? Is that yes. Something outside of housing? Because another part of this is private property rights, and you're like trying to force. And then do we really have the government start buying land, and then the Section 8, and now it's this bureaucratic scenario that has a bunch of legal hoops to jump through. I'm trying to think. Okay, how do we get outside to support that to where the housing is just. It's still expensive, but it can be relieved elsewhere.
It takes an approach all the way around, and that's the beauty of being involved at SwitchPoint. I've learned that there's all kinds of ways that we can affect that. That's why SwitchPoint has started their 24-hour daycare. They found a gap that says, hey, that's a part of the affordability problem.
I love that. Yeah.
And how do we make it so that there's some affordable childcare, and it fits into those people that have to work at night and they have children? What do they do with their children at night? So now we have that ability for them to have 24-hour childcare and still have employment that may be graveyard shift or what have you. So you're exactly right, and it's not just one part of it; it's a whole circle of those services that we have to look at to fill those gaps. So and I think that's something that St. George has been very proactive at. That started way back even. With our previous city manager, which said, hey, let's get involved in that field to see if we can help solve it on a different level than just pure housing. So, and that's been fun to be a part of, because I've learned way more than I've ever helped as far as being on that SwitchPoint board. So
when looking at this is the last question. Okay. When looking at your opportunity to be a voice in the greater politics of Utah, is sitting as a mayor sits at a different weight than sitting as a city council mayor. What are you looking forward to in representing the community into that larger pool of political conversations, whether it's the conversation around affordable housing or taxes or anything else? Is there an opportunity that you're looking forward to as being you get to be a voice for Southern Utah in this particular field?
I don't know that just in a particular field, but you're exactly right. Even though we might call it a weak mayor, that other places and the weight that the mayor carries, it can be even more impactful when we're dealing with other parts of the state and other entities. I think the biggest thing that I would do in that arena is to make sure that people understand that we feel like in St. George that we know how to do it right. So always it's going to be St. George first. But then right along that, we do recognize our greater community. We're the big brother, big sister, whatever you want to call it for Washington County, St. George's. Let's be honest.
And even regionally, I mean, if you could take the 4 or 5 counties that surround us, and we end up being an advocate and a regional support for all of those areas.
We want to be community minded, and we can work together, and we don't always have to be like somewhere else. Now, we can take what works elsewhere and implement it, but we don't have to always say, well, we want to be like, this place, Phoenix, whatever it is, Salt Lake. We don't always have to do that. Let's take the best ideas and move them forward. I think that's what we've done in St. George. And can we promote that on a more wider scale in the state of Utah? I think so. I think Utah in general does pretty good at that. we can promote that, be a voice of reason, saying we can have these win-win scenarios and move that not only, through the state of Utah, but through the country, and say, hey, this is what's working. We can work together. We can use that holistic approach and focus on things other than just always, a lot of these meetings you get in, it's always just focusing on the problem, how hard it is, how difficult it is. Let's get some solutions, move forward, and then go back to that data and make sure the data is real. So being a voice of reason, that's the main thing. And really, it's not that complicated. I mean, sometimes we're not reinventing the wheel. It's the same things that always apply, balance your budget, listen to your community, all those things that we know make good government. It's pretty simple. I think we've just lost focus on that. So back to the basics.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for having me on again.
That's all the questions, of course. And I want to make sure that we're getting, I'm glad we were able to talk about some specific strategies.
Perfect.
Make sure everybody gets out and votes. We had low voter turnout.
Yeah. And so I appreciate what you're doing to try to get people educated and get them out.
What do you think? What's your perspective on voter turnout? Why do you think people don't plug in?
It's apathy. Maybe things are going so good for them, they're okay. Or again, it's that, hey, no matter what I do, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
It could be some of both. So again, we just got to keep pounding the pavement.
Yeah, it's going to be
get out and get it done.
It's going to be close. Like, I think if the perspective, if you're listening to this and the perspective is my vote doesn't really matter, and maybe somebody who has that opinion, is that especially in this race, it's going to be close.
100%.
It's going to be very close.
We need you to get out and vote.
We're talking about maybe a couple hundred votes. Could be,
or even closer. It could be.
It could be. And so
when you analyze the numbers, it's going to be close.
Yep. And last thing I'll pitch to everybody who's listening, if I kept your attention this long, which I think we did, this was a good conversation. Don't mail in your ballot. Yes. You're going to get it in the mail, but don't put it back in the mail. Just go drop it off. Drop it off at the library, drop it off at the county building. Just drop it off.
And then get on and track it, because you can tell once they've received it.
Yeah, but if you put it in the mail, it goes down to Vegas, and if you wait till the last second, it sometimes doesn't get in because the postmark doesn't hit.
Yep.
Just don't put it in the mail. Just go drop it off. But get out the vote. Send this out to everybody. The Vote STG website is going to get updated soon. It has been updated. We took a little bit of break because we were hammering through a lot of interviews, but we're going to continue to run more interviews. We're going to include Santa Clara. We're going to include Washington City that we haven't really covered in the past because they didn't have primaries in those cities. Lucky them.
Yeah.
But we're going to cover a lot of the candidates again, mainly the mayors again. Most of the city council members I won't do again, so go back to the ones that made it through. We already did interviews with them. And spread the word. Share it out, votestg.com. And to find more about Jimmie, you go to
JimmieHughes.com.
JimmieHughes.com.
Pretty simple.
Easy peasy.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for being on here, guy.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you.
See you out there, guys. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.